fast. I don't know if you know that. And my neighbors on that side are in a war with me about how high the bamboo in the driveway is growing.
From the outside, it always looked like a fairy tale, the kind of story that audiences, critics, and devoted fans alike would whisper about in hushed tones late into the night or type furiously across countless online forums. But as with so many great romances, both fictional and real, the truth was far more complicated, filled with tenderness and longing on one hand, and with silence, hesitation, and inevitable heartbreak on the other. And now, finally, everyone knows why Heughan and Caitriona Balfe parted ways after years of speculation, denial, and secrecy. The truth at last seeing daylight in 2025 after a journey that began more than a decade earlier in 2013 when the Outlander crew started assembling its cast. And at that time, Sam was still a relatively unfamiliar face in the broader world of television and film. A man with undeniable presence and talent who had played various small parts but never yet broken through with the kind of role that would etch his name into the memory of millions, while Caitriona, for her part, came from an entirely different background, a striking former model who had walked runways in Paris, Milan, and New York, but who was only beginning to test the waters of acting. And yet, when she stepped into the audition room for Claire Randall, and her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and faintly vulnerable, accidentally locked with Sam's across the space. Something unexplainable passed between them, and it was at that very instant that Ronald D. Moore, the director and showrunner, sensed instinctively that he had found not only his Jamie Fraser and Claire Randall, but also a pairing that carried with it a spark that could never be forced, only discovered. And from that moment on, their connection would only deepen, tested and revealed in ways that few could have predicted. On set, they were unexpectedly in harmony from the very first days, learning their lines together until dawn in cold Scottish halls, laughing over fumbled sword choreography, practicing their horsemanship in the damp mist of the Highlands, and sitting quietly over shared meals in trailers where the heaters rattled, but their silences were warm. And even when the cameras stopped rolling, there was an unmistakable tenderness between them, the kind that slipped past professional barriers and into something undeniably more personal, with Sam draping his coat across Caitriona's shoulders when the nights grew chill, and Caitriona smiling in gratitude with a softness in her eyes that more than one member of the crew would later remark seemed to contain a secret intimacy, a light that went beyond simple friendship. Whispers began almost immediately behind the stage lights, and as the first seasons of Outlander unfolded with their sweeping story of love that bent time and endured all manner of hardship, the world seemed to fall into a fever for Jamie and Claire, and inevitably, fans began linking the actors themselves, writing on social media with certainty that there was no way such chemistry could be only a performance, insisting with conviction that Sam and Caitriona must surely be together beyond the boundaries of the screen, that no director could manufacture such depth of emotion. And while both Sam and Caitriona consistently deflected the rumors with calm insistence that they were close friends and nothing more, behind closed doors, late in the stone houses and hotel rooms of Scotland, the truth was that they were slowly weaving their own private story, sitting for long evenings by fireplaces, confiding their dreams, their fears, their loneliness in an industry where real connections are rare, and realizing with both wonder and trepidation that feelings were growing between them, tender yet strong, secret yet undeniable. The cracks began subtly, not from a lack of love, but from the weight of what love demands when placed under the glare of an unrelenting public eye. And though their relationship remained hidden, known only to a handful of trusted confidants, the pressure mounted with each passing year, particularly for Sam, who longed for something more than the shadows, who yearned not only to love Caitriona privately, but to step onto the red carpet with her hand in his, to tell the world without hesitation that she was his partner, his anchor, his beloved, whereas Caitriona, though equally moved by him, carried her own fears, her own scars from the past, and her own hesitation rooted in a profound concern that making their love public would taint it, turning it into a cheap headline or, worse still, reducing it to a mere marketing stunt for Outlander, a suspicion she could not bear to risk. "Sam, I don't want people to doubt our love," she would tell him, her voice quiet but firm, her eyes betraying the conflict within. Let's keep it to ourselves. Let's protect it. Let's not give them the satisfaction of dissecting us like characters on a page. And though Sam tried to understand, tried to respect her caution, his heart ached with the need to shout what he felt, a need that grew sharper with each event, each premiere, each photograph where they stood side by side yet apart, smiling. As colleagues, when what he truly wanted was to draw her near. Their love story, then, was written in secret gestures and hidden glances, in the hush of hotel corridors and the quiet of cars driving through rain-soaked Scottish streets, where they could for a time be simply themselves, free from the roles assigned to them by both script and public imagination. Yet always the question of the outside world loomed, demanding more than either of them was entirely willing to give, and slowly, painfully, those opposing desires began to stretch the bond between them thin. For Sam, the secrecy began to feel like a denial of something beautiful, as if the world were being kept at bay from a truth that deserved to be lived openly, while for Caitriona, the secrecy felt like a shield, the only way to preserve the fragile purity of what they had built. And though neither wished it, this divergence began to chip away at the foundation of their relationship. Over the years, other rumors came and went, whispers of other partners, hints of third parties, gossip that swirled without ever being confirmed, yet always at the center of it was the undeniable fact that Sam and Caitriona's bond, though once fierce and luminous, was caught in a tension it could not resolve, and so the world speculated while they carried their private burden quietly. When the truth finally emerged in 2025, after years of speculation, it became clear that there was no single villain in their story, no dramatic betrayal or sudden explosion, but rather the slow, aching reality of two people whose love was real, but who could not align their visions of how to live that love in the unforgiving light of fame. And so what began in 2013 with a glance across an audition room ended, many years later, with a quiet conversation on a cold, rainy night in Glasgow, when the raindrops tapped against the windows and Caitriona.
Internally, I was on fire.
We're gonna go and find Nenny tomorrow when it's not raining, right, honey? And then today, we're gonna get a doll for...
Sam nodded, outwardly calm as though nothing had changed, but deep within him small cracks had already begun to form, subtle fractures in the foundation of a love he had once believed unshakable, and those cracks only widened when whispers began to circulate about what the press so eagerly called the third person, real or fake. A shadowy presence that hovered over his relationship with Caitriona and left him caught in the torment of doubt. And it was in 2016 when this quiet storm began to gather force, for that was the year Caitriona met Tony McGill, a music producer whose name meant little to the public at first, but who would soon become synonymous with the endless speculation surrounding her. And although at the beginning they were described as nothing more than friends, as often happens in an industry where friendships are easily formed over late-night conversations and creative projects, it did not take long before rumors of a romance between them spread like wildfire across tabloids and fan forums alike. And when the press finally published photographs of Caitriona and Tony together, smiling easily and walking side by side, Sam felt as though the air had been knocked from his lungs. For even if she had told him otherwise, even if she had insisted repeatedly that Tony was nothing more than a companion, the sight of her with someone else pierced through him with a pain sharper than any blade, leading him to wonder late at night, when the set was quiet and his hotel room echoed with emptiness, whether the real reason she had never wanted to tell the world about their love was not out of fear of publicity or skepticism, but because her heart was already divided, already given, in part at least, to someone else, though he tried desperately not to believe it. Caitriona, for her part, tried to reassure him with sincerity in her voice, insisting that Tony was nothing more than a trusted friend, and that Sam was the one who held her truest affection. But still, an invisible wall had begun to grow between them, one made not of outright lies or betrayals, but of doubts unspoken, of silences too heavy to be lifted, and no matter how she tried to soothe his worries, Sam felt that her reassurances lacked the clarity and certainty he longed for, as though she herself was not entirely sure how to reconcile the life she lived in public with the love she carried in secret. Then came what Sam would later think of as the fateful moment, the evening when what had long been an undercurrent finally became undeniable. For one night, the whole crew gathered to celebrate the end of another season of Outlander, a tradition marked with laughter, glasses of whiskey raised high, and memories shared of long days spent under gray Scottish skies. But while the room buzzed with merriment, Sam's attention was caught by the sight of Caitriona across the room, her face alight with laughter as she spoke with Tony, her eyes glimmering in a way that had once been reserved for him alone. And in that instant, something inside him broke. The world seemed to tilt and the party noise faded into a hollow echo as he realized that whatever they had, it was no longer what it once was, or at least it no longer lived solely between the two of them. That night, unable to bear the sight of it any longer, Sam slipped quietly out of the celebration, unnoticed by most, and walked alone through the empty streets of Edinburgh, his heart heavy with turmoil, the cobblestones glistening with rain beneath his feet. And though the city seemed alive with shadows and whispers, his mind was consumed by a single, unbearable truth: that there are some things in love which never need to be spoken aloud to be real, that there are truths which exist silently between two people, unseen yet undeniable, and one of those truths was that what they had was slipping away from him. It took him several months to make the bitter decision that followed, months in which he tried to convince himself that perhaps he had misread her laughter, that perhaps her eyes had shone with nothing more than friendly delight. But in the end, the ache of doubt and the weight of his unfulfilled desire to live openly with her became too much to bear, and so he chose to end what had once been the center of his universe. Not with a dramatic confrontation or a cruel word, but with a text message that carried the simplicity of finality. "I think it's time for us to stop," he wrote,